fight for freedom, the pushback on Capitol Hill against a landmark Supreme Court decision for religious liberty. The government sends out draft cards, but no one will be called up to serve. We'll explain the mix-up. His family was killed in the Congo. A Catholic group helps with the healing. And the nominations are out. Which of your favorite shows could win an Emmy? Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Thursday, July 10th, 2014. Good evening from Washington, D.C. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick. Looking at your news now, the fight over the contraception mandate is not over. Defying the Supreme Court, some Democrats now say they want to force all for-profit companies to pay for contraception for their employees. Our Jason Calvi covers the story from the Senate tonight. Jason?
Yeah, Brian, just when we thought the birth control mandate and for-profit companies issue was settled, not so quick. Today, Democratic senators proposing to counter this historic Supreme Court decision.
June 30th, the Supreme Court sided with the owners of Hobby Lobby and Conestoga Wood. The justices struck down the birth control mandate for the Green and Hahn families. They don't have to violate their faith. They don't have to provide abortion-inducing drugs to their employees.
We are truly thankful for a decision that allowed us to continue operating our family business according to our principles.
But today, Senate Democratic leaders criticized the High Court.
It is a horrible decision, certainly the worst in the last 25 years.
5 male justices gave their blessing to CEOs and corporations across America to go ahead and deny legally mandated health care coverage for their employees.
So these 4 men and a woman are proposing what they call the Not My Boss's Business Act. 1 independent and 43 Democratic senators are sponsoring the bill. It would ban employers from denying any health benefits, including contraception, to their employees. The Supreme Court's ruling in the Hobby Lobby case was based on the 1993 law RFRA, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. That means another law of Congress could override the court's Hobby Lobby decision. Some business owners say the proposal would force them to violate their faith. Senator Schumer responds,
"You don't have to form a corporation. We wouldn't tell the owners of Hobby Lobby to convert to a different religion or disobey their religion. But we don't say that they have to open up a company."
And those Democratic senators now saying that they're going to have a vote on this bill next week, Brian. Very controversial issue. Now for the other side of the story, I turn back to you in the studio.
All right, Dr. Charmaine Yost is joining us, president of Americans United for Life, also Lila Rose from Live Action. We're here to discuss this further. Dr. Yost, on one hand, you have religious liberty. On the other, the so-called women's rights for health care, which we're lumping contraception into. Is this really an issue, or is this is a political debate here?
Well, you know, Brian, I think it's important to really hone in and focus on what we're really fighting about here, because they're trying to make it complicated. But there's a very simple question at stake here, and it's whether or not you, as a businessman or a businesswoman, give up your constitutional right to freedom of conscience when you decide to open up a business. And the Supreme Court last week said that you did not, and that Hobby Lobby and Conestoga Woods still had their freedom of conscience even though they were business owners. And that's what these senators are trying to go up against now.
Well, Lila, you heard the senators say they don't have to go into business. What do you make of that?
Well, it's kind of an insanity, because there's basically saying shut down your businesses unless you're going to provide abortion drugs, pay for abortion drugs for your staff. I think that what's amazing about this legislation and this pushback from pro-abortion senators is they're not even being honest with the people that they're speaking to, with the press, with American people, because they're not addressing the fact that what they're really interested in is abortion coverage. That case was about abortion coverage and not having to give abortifacient drugs to staff and make the businesses pay for that. But what the Senate and these Democratic senators are focused on in a pro-abortion, rabid, really a zealous pro-abortion zeal that they have, is to get businesses, force pro-life, Christian Catholic businesses to provide abortions for their staff through abortion drugs.
In our 3 branches of government, I thought the legislative body made laws and then they were, interpreted judicially through the judicial body, and the Supreme Court was the highest, and these guys are coming back and saying, no, we don't like that decision, so we're going to try to pass some other legislation. Do you think this will get any traction?
I don't think so. I think that if they can lie, it may get traction. If they can skirt the real issue, which is that they're fighting for abortifacient drugs to be provided, and that to be the businesses to be forced to pay for that. So I think it's really up to us and how much noise can we make in showing and exposing what this bill is really about and what the whole agenda, the so-called war on women agenda, is about. It's really about providing abortions and claiming that abortions are somehow medicine when it's a human rights abuse and against the woman as well.
Well, I think it's really important. I'm so glad that you ran a clip from Senator Murray talking about the men versus the women on the court. Let's be very, very clear that what's going on here is demagoguery at its worst. They are trying to lead up to another summer of talking about the war on women right before the Senate elections in November. And that is what this is really all about, is giving them a platform for trying to make this out to be something about women. And, I kind of like the irony of the fact that, thank you for having Lila and me on tonight to make the case that the real war on women is these senators on Capitol Hill who are trying to force female business owners to go against their freedom of conscience.
Dr. Charmaine Yost, Lila Rose, thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Some of the other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been following in today's world. Prosecutors today charged the gunman suspected in a shooting rampage in Texas. They say Ronald Lee Haskell dressed as a delivery driver to get into a house near Houston Wednesday. 4 children were at home. Police say Haskell waited until the parents returned home, then shot all 6. Officers tracked down Haskell, who led them on a chase, and they eventually rammed his car with 2 special armored vehicles and made the arrest. Meanwhile, in Connecticut, a toddler left in a hot car all day has died. Police say the 15-month-old boy's father didn't drop him off at daycare, leaving him instead in the car while he worked. Authorities haven't said whether they'll file charges. It's the second such case in the past few weeks. Justin Harris is facing trial in Georgia for intentionally leaving his 22-month-old son in sweltering June heat. Air raid sirens sounded across Jerusalem today as militants in Gaza continued their rocket fire at Israel. Israel's military says 2 rockets were intercepted while 2 others fell in open areas. No Israelis have been seriously harmed by the incoming rockets at this point. Israel's military hit hundreds of Hamas targets overnight, focusing on underground tunnel networks and rocket launching sites. Palestinian leaders say the strikes also hit a home and a cafe, killing more than a dozen people. Here in the States, demonstrators on both sides went to the Israeli consulate in New York, letting their voices be heard. Pro-Palestine demonstrators compared Israel with racist organizations in the U.S. Pro-Israel demonstrators held up signs saying the Palestinian organization Hamas is provoking war.
I came out to support the right of the Palestinians to live without racist oppression, the right of working people to go forward and reach out to each other without being divided by criminals who head up the capitalist regime.
Secretary of State John Kerry's in China right now, and one of the main topics on his agenda is economic dialogue between the 2 countries, but he still has his eye on that situation in the Middle East. He says the U.S. is trying to stem the violence in a way that Israel can still defend itself from rocket fire. Well, I'm old enough to remember the military draft, but not this old. The Selective Service sent out draft notices to men who may have served in the First World War. These notices were mistakenly sent to more than 14,000 Pennsylvania men born in the 1890s, ordering them to register for the draft. Selective Service says the mix-up originated with the Pennsylvania Department of Motor Vehicles. A batch of records of men born between 1993 and 1997 mixed up with records of men born a century earlier were sent to Selective Service. Of course, the computers took over from there and sent out the notices. Families receiving those notices were told to ignore them. The city clerk in Denver decides to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples, violating Colorado state law. The Attorney General is suing to stop clerks from issuing these licenses. The move in Denver comes after a judge ruled in favor of nearby Boulder County clerk, who was also issuing marriage licenses to gay couples. More fallout from the spy games between Germany and the U.S. A German lawmaker says his country has asked the top American intelligence official to leave the country. The request comes after 2 recent claims of people spying on Germany for the United States. And then don't forget about last year's revelation about the NSA listening in on Chancellor Angela Merkel's cell phone conversations. A State Department spokesman refused comment on this issue earlier today. The president has a long road ahead before getting the billions he wants to address the crisis at the border. Republican leaders in Congress say he's not getting a blank check, and they will need many more details before acting. A congressional committee held a hearing on immigration today. Meanwhile, the Department of Health and Human Services offers a media tour of a holding facility for undocumented children at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. But an Oklahoma congressman thinks the media should reject the offer because the conditions that have been placed on the visit. HHS will not allow interviews with staff or children at the shelter, and they will not let journalists use recording devices. Congressman Jim Bridenstine sent a message to an HHS official defending the media, saying, quote, "This violates the First Amendment. This is not transparent. HHS is trying to muzzle the media and hide the human tragedy that has resulted directly from the administration's failure to enforce the law," end quote. Today, hundreds of faith leaders in favor of immigration reform took their message to Capitol Hill. Members of different faiths, including a bishop from the Archdiocese of Washington, prayed outside the Capitol. Then they went inside to talk with lawmakers.
I am here at Advocacy Day, hoping to sway some opinions of our representatives towards comprehensive immigration reform.
Being here to talk to our representatives is very meaningful, to try to tell them, for make them understand what we are passing through or they are passing through.
Those two immigration advocates from Chattanooga, Tennessee, met with staff members from Tennessee lawmakers. They came to D.C. this week for the National Migration Conference. Coming up, photojournalist Mark Irons takes us on a touching journey of struggle, courage, and faith, and the Vatican connection to both World Cup finalists. On Thursday, the 10th of July, this is EWTN News Nightly. Good evening, I'm Brian Patrick. And tonight, a powerful witness to hope in the face of adversity. Mark Irons has the story of a young man getting back on track after losing everything.
Emmy Kalangwa is grateful to be here. A refugee from Africa, he will never forget what happened 6 years ago in the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
It was a war between the rebels and the government. And my daddy was targeted by rebels because he was in a government soldier.
Rebels came to Amy's home and questioned his father.
They asked my dad about the document. I didn't know what document they were looking for. And my dad, he said he don't know, and they drove him outside. They were killing him really bad.
The rebels murdered 7 of Amy's siblings. Amy, 2 brothers, and his mother escaped into the jungle. His mother was spotted and killed. Dehydrated after days of wandering, his baby brother died as Amy carried him. After 2 months in the forest, Amy and 1 brother made it to safety in Uganda. Jesuit Refugee Services gave them aid.
There's a hope, and never give up, always to keep trying. There in the forest, there's no car.
Hope for Amy after losing 10 family members. He's now 20, working on a college degree in Florida. This is the cover to the book he's writing, Out of the Lion's Jaw. Outside this D.C. library, he talked about one of his dreams.
Yeah, I wish and I hope one day my book is going to be here in his library.
And the reason Amy keeps going?
I believe in God, and I believe he knows everything. So I believe he saved me from Africa in the jungle all the way there to here. So I can see the tiny light in my life.
Mark Irons, EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you, Mark. Earlier this week in Rome, Pope Francis held private meetings with 6 clergy sex abuse victims. He begged for their forgiveness. Vatican spokesman Father Federico Lombardi described the meetings as exceptional. Here in the U.S., Catholic dioceses are reaching out to victims of clerical sex abuse. Michael Donahue, the Director of Communications for the Catholic Diocese of Arlington, Virginia, is with us. The Diocese of Arlington has an Office of Victim Assistance. Would you describe what it does?
The Office of Victim Assistance acts out on the mission of Bishop Laverty in the Diocese of Arlington to minister to victims of clergy abuse within the diocese, as well to victims of any sexual abuse. We have victims who have suffered family abuse from teachers and other individuals. And we also have many cases of abuse that we are working in support for individuals and families that occur to other parts of the country, being such a dynamic area. We've got a lot of individuals who are not natives to the area.
Is this fairly unique, or are other dioceses doing this that you're aware of?
I couldn't say categorically that every diocese has an Office of Victim Assistance exactly like ours, but I believe that the functions of our office are seen throughout the country. Our Office of Victim Assistance has been in place since the Dallas Charter, and I believe that many of the same services and ministry are taking place across the country, reflecting the intent of the Charter and also the repeated calls of Pope Benedict and now Pope Francis as well.
Yeah, Pope Francis is really calling on bishops to be more accountable in handling these cases. Is that what this office is about? Are you able to do that?
Yes, there's an Office of Child Protection, which every diocese has, right. As the Charter called for. The functions of the Office of Child Protection in the Diocese of Arlington have been in place since before the Charter, but as well we have the Office of Victim Assistance, which helps coordinate the bishop's activity. He's celebrated nearly 40 healing masses over the past decade, as well as prayer services for those individuals and victims who don't feel they can come to Mass. Also prayer groups and settings where he can sit in retreats to hear from victims. He's done scores and scores of these over the last decade. Very difficult work, I'm sure. This is a reality that we have to deal with, and it's got to be very difficult, but very important. Bishop Laverty has embraced this, as I believe and hope that bishops across the country have done. That's why I think Pope Francis's comments are just so important in his meeting with victims, the 6 from Britain, Ireland, and Germany. I was really struck by his language, and I apologize to look down, but I feel the gaze of Jesus, and I ask for the grace to weep. I feel that was very important. It's an important signal to, first and foremost, all the victims, so that they know that this is a continuing priority, as well as to all the bishops and the clergy and those who work for the church to know that this is important work that they must continue to focus on, as Bishop Laverty has done in bishops and diocesan staff and parish staff across the country, but as well as to the flock at large to know this is still important. This is a wound that must be healed. The language that Pope Francis used was stark. He talked about grave crimes, sin. We often hear the imagery of a wound on the body of Christ. We know intuitively when you think about it, this is very true, and that's why this work is so important. And Pope Francis's meeting was so vital and to the life of the Church and to continued healing, just as Pope Benedict's was here in D.C. in 2008 and his meetings subsequent to that. And that work goes on. Mike Donahue from the Diocese of Arlington, thanks for joining us. Thank you. Well, the Vatican makes a global appeal for peace through soccer fans using Twitter this weekend. The Pontifical Council for Culture is promoting the hashtag Pause for Peace for this weekend's World Cup finals. The idea is to take a moment of silence to call for a stop to war. The Vatican reminds us that historically sporting events were moments of peace. That's when war ceased. The Olympic truce, in fact, allowing athletes to travel safely to participate in the games, actually dates back to the 9th century BC. You can be part of this Pause for Peace effort by using the hashtag Pause for Peace on Sunday when Germany plays Argentina. Well, don't tell the Argentinian players, but Pope Francis has given his word he's not going to pray for either team to win the World Cup final. That doesn't mean he's not going to cheer for one. People on social media are calling Sunday's game the Pope versus Pope match. Pope Francis, native Argentina, plays Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI's homeland of Germany. Around the Vatican, both Argentine and German flags are displayed in tourist shops as fans from both countries eagerly await Sunday's match. A Vatican spokesman says Francis and Benedict are unlikely to get together for a viewing party, but he's not ruling that out yet. Up next, find out what shows are up for Emmy Awards and why. And he's not even a year old and already making the cover of Vanity Fair. We're grateful you're watching tonight on EWTN News Nightly. I'm Brian Patrick. It's television's big day, if you will. The 2014 Primetime Emmy Award nominations were announced this morning. Actress Mindy Kaling and TV host Carson Daly made the announcement to the major category nominees from Los Angeles early this morning. Carson got to announce that his own show, The Voice, is up for the Reality Competition Program Award. Breaking Bad, Downton Abbey, Game of Thrones, House of Cards, Mad Men, and True Detective are all up for Best Drama Series. In the Comedy Series category, The Big Bang Theory, Louie, Modern Family, Orange is the New Black, Silicon Valley, and Veep are all contenders. Good to welcome back Ashley McGuire from the Catholic Association. I don't watch Game of Thrones, never have, but I've heard that there's some very explicit material in there. What do you think?
Absolutely. I don't watch it either, but I've read about different scenes that are so graphic you really can't even believe it. And I'd say in general, the thing that really struck me that ties all of the drama nominees together is the fact that, with the exception of Downton Abbey, they are all graphically sexual or very violent. And I think that's troubling.
Indeed. In the comedy series that you've got Modern Family, 4 times now they've won, so it's no surprise they've been nominated. This isn't a family show, though, is it?
I don't think so, no. I think it's deceptive the way they've named the show, but I think there's a lot in there that parents don't want their children watching.
One of the things that I find troublesome from everything I've heard is that some of the things that are very objectionable to us as Catholics are portrayed as pretty normal in this setting.
Yeah, no, again, I would say that almost all of the nominees in different categories, but especially in drama and comedy, are full of very explicit, graphic material. And I think, it's one thing for adults to be watching those shows, but I think for children that's a very different story.
So what do these nominations say about our culture and television as a whole?
Well, I think if art is a reflection of culture, then we have reason to be really concerned. I was thinking about the shows that 10, 20 years ago were popular, and they were, they had a lot of objectionable content as well, but they weren't as dark. So I think that's really the theme, is this darkness. Breaking Bad, Mad Men, they're all very dark in their own way.
Now, this was a movie, not a television show. I just watched Ben Stiller's The Secret Life of Walter Mitty and realized when it was over there was no profanity, there was no nudity.
I loved that movie.
The most intimate spot was they held hands at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
The whole thing was just, it was very out there and fantasy, but it was so clean, and I love that. Why is it so important that Catholics, Christians, people of faith are involved in Hollywood, in production of television shows, rather than leaving it to others?
I think it's important to both be involved and to have some awareness of these shows, because I think they make excellent tools for making our own points. There's a lot of ways to use some of these television shows to talk about the culture, to make our arguments to the culture as to what's right and what's wrong.
All right, from the Catholic Association, our friend Ashley McGuire. Thanks for being with us, Ashley.
Thank you.
Well, with his first birthday less than 2 weeks away now, Prince George and his royal parents make the cover of Vanity Fair magazine. In the issue, Prince William and Kate Duchess of Cambridge confess his first few months were rough. They say George cried a lot, didn't sleep through the night. Sounds pretty normal to me. He seems to be doing better now that he's almost won. In the Vanity Fair interview, his mom says she was relieved he behaved very well during his first public appearance. The royal couple said they would like to raise their child as normal as possible. Well, he is known as one of the top bartenders in the world, earning awards, even mixing drinks at the White House. But as Wyatt Goolsby reports tonight, Derek Brown has another ingredient for success behind the bar, his Catholic faith.
Just 10 blocks from the White House on 7th Street in Washington, you'll find The Passenger. It looks like any other bar where people get a drink after work. But away from the noise, in the back, you'll find another bar, a speakeasy called the Columbia Room. Here, 39-year-old Derek Brown turns bartending into an art form.
Some people have an association with bartending as, college kids slinging shots. And, what we're trying to do is show that bartending is actually a very skilled job, that it's something that you take time to make a great cocktail.
Brown opened both bars in 2009. In the years since, he's been recognized for his cocktail craftsmanship by Time, GQ, and the Wall Street Journal. The recognition led to a chance to bartend at the White House and meet President Obama.
But as they introduced me, they said, "Oh, this is the mixologist, Derek Brown." Now, I call myself a bartender. I've never called myself a mixologist. And when they introduced me, he said, "Isn't that just a bartender?" Then he said, "Well, wait a minute. Being a bartender is a lot like being a coach," and he pointed to Michelle, and he said, "or being the president of the United States. Everyone thinks they can do it, but they can't, can they?"
Regardless of how much I pressed him, he wouldn't reveal any state secrets.
Did you make a drink for him? No, I can't tell. I'll never be able to tell.
Joking, right?
Well, the president doesn't come up to the bar.
There we go. Something like that.
But Brown didn't hesitate to show me a few tips and tricks behind the bar.
Not bad.
I did not
expect
that.
For him, it's not just a craft, but something that's part of our American culture and even our Catholic values.
We have these moments where, we fall in love, where we meet friends, where we console our friends, when we celebrate the union of people. And all of these things, alcohol is an important part of those celebrations. And it doesn't have to be, but it is.
Brown says drinking in moderation can create an important sense of communitas, Latin for community. It's that sense of community that continues to drive him. In Washington, Wyatt Goolsby, EWTN News Nightly.
Busted Wyatt drinking on the job. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, watch again anytime you like on EWTN's YouTube page. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, I'm Brian Patrick. Good night and God bless you.